All right. Welcome back to another Tech Talk. I'm your host, Josh from KeepItTechie. Excited to have you guys all here today. Go on and like the video, share it if you can, subscribe if you're new here. I definitely appreciate all you guys coming through. I got another special guest in the building. I'm super excited about this one. He has a awesome YouTube channel where he covers a lot dealing with networking engineering. And you guys know I always like to bring on someone different, someone that works in the tech industry, just like me. And just try to hear about their background. And so today I have my man John Green on today. What's up, John? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going on, man? It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out to come through, man. I know it's kind of last minute, you know what I'm saying? Like we talked before, I had to drive down to San Diego this week, during the middle of the work week, and it was just a hectic week this week, you know what I'm saying? But I still wanted to try to get somebody on, cover their, background and what they do, and especially since you have like an awesome channel, provide a lot of information. I really want to bring you on, to share with my audience. Hopefully, those guys go over there and subscribe as well to your channel because, like I said, yeah, I think you do great content, awesome content that I'm not, proficient in. I started out in networking a little bit, but not as much as where you at, based on your background and what I seen. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate you, coming through and do this.
Yeah, no problem at all. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And shout out to everybody here. I see a couple people here. Lemon Carrot was in the building beforehand. One of my members. I appreciate you coming through. He says good afternoon all. Sheik, what's up? How you doing? Greetings, keep it techie fam. Please like and share. Yeah, appreciate you. Caesar, I see you. He says buenas Tordes, which is good afternoon. I know that, I know a little bit of Spanish, but shout out to you, man. Thanks for coming through. Appreciate you guys. And like I said, go on and like the video. So let's start it off, man. First thing I like to do is get you to give a little bit about your background in the tech field.
Yeah, so definitely. So my name's John Green. For those of you who don't know me, how I got into tech is I enrolled through a year-long certificate program at my local community college. And it was through that program that I really learned the fundamentals of what is networking, how it works, and just getting overall exposure to the basic concepts within it. So while I was going through that program, it did mirror one of the entry level certifications out there at the time called the CCENT. So I was able to leverage what I was learning in that program to be able to get that first certification. Um, Following that program, I was able to, I got my first internship into it was a 3-month internship for a junior network engineer role. And I was able to shadow network engineers, uh, learn from them, see what they do on a day to day, and just get that sort of initial understanding of how things work. Um, the internship, it got extended, and eventually it ended up uh, converting into a temp to hire position as a knock analyst, where I was able to get my first real world experience in that role as performing help desk and just getting familiar with utilizing ticketing systems. The internship, it was more of a safe zone area. It wasn't like what you would expect to just walk in and um, have the feel of really communicating with customers.
Hmm.
So when I transitioned into that knock analyst role, it really gave me exposure and insight to what it feels like to actually be in a help desk role for the first time and utilizing these systems that I was never familiar with
Yeah.
to be able to interface with customers and help them resolve their issues. Um, so I was in that role for about 3 months, I want to say 3 or 4 months. But unfortunately, COVID had hit in 2020, and that position had came to an end. And so when that position ended, that really forced me to, and I talk about this on my channel as well. It forced me to really say, all right, am I going to go back to working as a cashier since
Mm-hmm.
I'm unemployed currently, or should I keep pursuing and studying IT to figure out uh, how to land this first job and just pursuing on that track? So inevitably, I ended up not going back to the role as a cashier, and uh, I uh, kept studying, kept getting serious about what I was learning in IT to sort of get a better understanding of how things worked under my belt. Um, I had my CCNP after having that internship and being in that knock analyst role, but at that time point, I still felt like a huge amount of imposter syndrome.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I had this certification, but technically I didn't have much exposure in the field, so I wasn't too confident in my abilities. And so I kept studying, doing some home projects, getting familiar with that, putting my application out there, putting my resume out there, and um, just getting familiar with the process. That eventually ended up in me landing my first role as a network engineer, as
Okay.
a contract employee, and that was for a company called Cisco, one of the big networking vendors out there.
Oh yeah.
Um,
We all know Cisco. Yep.
right. Um, and this role, it was definitely fast paced, but it did get me in the door in terms of finally making because I was a cashier and I was making like $12, $13 an hour. And this
Mm-hmm.
role was my first leap in the IT field to where I was actually making $50,000 a year. And previously to that, that didn't really seem like a realistic goal in my head frame. So to just have made it that far, I was like, oh wow. And I was getting serious and just learning more and more. And it sort of just pushed me to want to do better and learn more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but while I was in that role, being that it was a contractor role and I didn't really know the difference between being a contract employee versus a full-time, I realized that it was tough to start out as a beginner in that role because it was really fast paced.
Oh yeah.
I had to learn the role in about 2 weeks, and it was pretty much learn as you go. Um, and so, I mean, that's how it happened. So I ended up shortly after that freelancing as an independent contractor.
Okay.
And when I actually moved into that portion of IT, I realized for the first time, hey, I can actually price what I do as price the work that I do at something that's beyond what I would normally be employed at. Like if I was to get a job, it would be say $27 for entry level network engineer at the time. Whereas in this role, I was able to price myself at $45 an hour, and be it that I was being paid hourly, it it really made uh, it sort of brings it into perspective. So I wasn't being paid $45 an hour for 8 hour shift or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
for the work that you do, whether you're putting in 2 hours, 3 hours on an assignment, you get charged at that hourly rate. And that's when it really clicked. And I was like, oh, so when I'm communicating with job recruiters, that number that I say or specify as how much I currently make in terms of uh,
Compensation.
working as
Yeah.
working as a network engineer, I can actually use that um, and reference that in the direction of where I want to go, rather than feeling as if I have to, if I was realistically making full time $27 an hour, and I was able to actually negotiate that better, and that ended up in me turning into a position where I was able to yield a $56 an hour rate,
Mm-hmm.
just in the role of being a network engineer. And it was all because rather than saying, I currently make this, I was like, you know what? Let me say I make this amount because this is the direction I want to go, and
Mm-hmm.
see how that yields the outcome. And that landed in me making that first role that put me over that six-figure mark.
Okay, okay, yeah, that's dope, man. Yeah, you got a great background, and one of the things that stuck out to me, that I want to see if you can cover a little more. How were you able to secure that internship earlier in your career? Because I know a lot of people come on how am I supposed to get experience if I don't, if I don't have a job, you know what I'm saying? And so I just want to touch on that, or see if you could touch on that internship, like how you was able to secure it. Was it through the program that you were going through in school, or how did it work out for you?
Definitely. So yeah, let me touch on that. So networking really played a key factor in this, being that I was in this program,
Mm-hmm.
and even though I wasn't enrolled for a degree or anything like that, the local community college was tied to the local jobs in the area. And so towards the end of the program, the professor, he came to me and it was like, hey, you're doing, I see you're taking your learning seriously. I think you would be a good fit for one of these openings at one of the jobs that was partnered with the school or whatnot.
Okay.
And he was like, all you need to do is, get your resume together. At the time, I didn't have anything. I didn't know too much of what a resume was because I was working as a cashier, and as a cashier, you don't need that.
Yeah.
And so I was able to make a call to my cousin, and he put me in contact with a person that professionally creates your resumes, and it only cost me $50 at the time
Okay.
because I tried to put it together myself, but it didn't work out too well. It was
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the words that really communicated my expertise. I was like, how does working at a cashier make sense to somebody that's interviewing me for a help desk role?
Yeah.
But being able that I was able to get in contact with that resume writer, they were actually able to communicate my skill set and how my previous experience would uh, stand out for me being an applicant in that role. And that was really key to me landing that internship, having a resume that clearly articulated what I was exposed to during that program and how to leverage my customer service experience
Mm-hmm.
as a positive going into one of those help desk or internship role positions.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope, man. Like, and um, I really want to highlight to the audience, listen to what he did. He basically got in contact with someone that writes resumes, and he invested in himself. And that's something you gotta do when you're getting in this field. You gotta constantly do that. You gotta invest in yourself to be successful. So that's dope, bro. You know what I'm saying? That you hit that point or whatever. um yeah, and that's super awesome. But
No, that's real.
yeah.
Investing in yourself, that goes a long way.
Hmm.
Just to speak on that a little
Go
more.
ahead, go ahead.
Um, Prior to even getting that first job after the internship, that was a time where I had to realize, because I was no longer in school, and in
Hmm.
order to dig in to learn more about how networking works, well, I didn't have a teacher there to hold my hand. I had to figure out, what resources do I have available. And I wasn't a big reader at the time. I sucked when it came to reading the textbooks. Like if you saw one of Cisco's book back in the day for the ICD-1, it was like this really thick book.
Oh, I know,
And I
I got a
felt
whole
like
bunch of books around here like that, man. I got you.
I felt like the book was designed so I wouldn't understand it, and so
Hmm.
I had to go out there, and I found platforms like Udemy and CBT Nuggets
Oh yeah.
that really allowed me to realize, the language that I was able to understand stuff through, which was through video and through
Mm-hmm.
audio and hearing other people break things down. And so making that investment with CBT Nuggets was like $64 a month at the time. And at the time, $64 a month, that was a big deal for
Mm-hmm.
somebody making $13 an hour or whatnot. But yeah, it definitely paid off, and it's been a go-to resource even today in terms of just continuing my education, because I mean you got to learn what works for you and what allows you to pick up on things at a rate that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, man. You just dropping gym after gym after gym. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's one thing I like to say as well. Like, I mean, everybody learns different. You know what I'm saying? You got to find that learning style that works for you. So, I 100% agree with you. Like, I have to. I have to actually do it in order for it to fully sink in. So, yeah, I can read it all day, but until I actually do it, that's where it'll sink into my head. Okay, this is how it actually works. This is what's uh, happening between these two applications when they talk, or this is what's, I actually have to do it. You know what I'm saying, in order to fully grasp it. So I get you there, bro. 100%.
Experience is real.
Uh-huh. And that's and you also brought that up as well. How you spent time learning things, on your own. Um, and I'm assuming you were, well, what I took from what you said was setting up a home lab. And I get to that a little later, but yeah, that's something that I'm real big on telling people to do, set up your home lab. That's that way you can practice what you learn. You know what I'm saying? So I agree with you there, bro. Let me give a couple shout outs. So I see keep a couple more people coming in. Go on, like the video, share, and also I dropped John's not email, YouTube channel in the chat. So make sure you guys go over there and subscribe. Like I said earlier, if you missed the beginning, he does a lot of great content over there. So make sure you subscribe to his channel. I definitely wanna push his channel, man. But so John, next thing I wanna go into. So let's say someone was trying to get into the area where you are, like network engineering. Someone wants to get into one of those positions. Like, where do you think they should start? And I know it's different, but where would you recommend they start?
Definitely, definitely. So if they're just trying to get into IT, generally what I say is, you know, see what, because there's a lot of parts of IT,
Oh yeah.
and it's really important to find something that you're curious about, because if you don't find something that holds your attention, well, it's just going to make the process of learning something that you're not really passionate about that much more longer and harder and difficult. So I definitely say look through the different areas that IT encompasses, whether that's cybersecurity, programming, cloud, networking. Find what uh, learn a gist about what each one of those areas touches on, and see what clicks with you. Do you want to know how the devices that you're on communicate um, um, from one device to another, allowing you to do a lot of the things that you do every day from your
Mm-hmm.
computers, phones, tablets, or whatnot? So definitely figure out what aligns with your interests. But if we're talking in the terms of someone that wants to be, say, a network engineer, and I think this process sort of ties back to any route that you want to take, in my opinion, is it's okay. So you've identified you eventually want to be a network engineer, but that doesn't mean that that should be necessarily the first, and I don't even recommend that it's the first stop that you make in terms of pursuing that role,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have no experience. I i encourage a lot of people to seek that entry level role, and a lot of people knock entry level roles because they think that they don't realize the amount of value that you can get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's, like, for instance, well, let me just finish that train of thought first. So certainly pursue an entry level role. That way you can get your foot in the door. You can wrap your head around the basics of how things work, how to communicate with customers. For me, I came into the field of IT with a cashier background. It was non-technical
Hmm.
outside of the POS terminal that I made transactions on. And so to go from doing that to communicating with customers via online, it was a whole concept in itself that I had to wrap my head around in terms of knowing how providing support in IT works. The main difference that I would say between a network engineer role and, say, a help desk position is um, the networking aspect. You begin to start apply what you've learned from potentially a certification that you've been studying for in that actual role. But in essence, the primary role of a network engineer or whatever you do, it's going to be facilitating some sort of support to some degree. And there's just tremendous amount of insight that you can gain from understanding how providing that support works in one of those entry level positions.
Okay, okay, yeah, I agree with you there, man. Because I always point people to learn those fundamentals. If you uh, the fundamentals will help you no matter where you go in IT, in my opinion. If you understand the fundamentals of systems in general, like with the A plus style information, or the Net Plus information, the fundamentals of networking, because that doesn't get very detailed like in a Cisco certification, but you understand the fundamentals, subnet mask, IP addresses, how it all works, and how it talks with the 7 layer. I forget what it's called. I haven't done networking in forever, man. But this,
That TSI model,
yeah, yeah,
I know,
yep,
yeah.
yep. So just understanding that will help you in the future, and that has helped me. Because I don't know if I tell you, John, I've been doing it for about I've been doing IT for about 15 years, and so I've done the network administration roles, systems administration role, which the networking really what that networking role that I worked in. I worked as a systems administrator. I was just maintaining their systems. Once the networking piece was set up, you know what I'm saying, I didn't have to, deal with that. It was mainly systems work. But anyway, I've done all these different positions, and those fundamentals that I learned, because I went to somewhat of a, um, a technical school, Remington College, where we learned, the basics, and I was able to get some certifications there. But once I got, past that, those fundamental skills that I learned, has helped me throughout my career. So yeah, it's
Mm.
important. It's important to get those. Um,
15 years of veteran, yeah. For you to be able to go back and say, just emphasize how critical those fundamentals are is
mhm.
just is eye-opening. Because
Yeah,
I mean, going through it initially, a lot of people skip over them thinking them that they're not that important because it's the basics. And sometimes it can be a little boring learning the fundamentals of stuff, but that's like the most critical components of what you do.
yep, 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 exactly. I agree. Now, let's hop into certification. So, and I typically ask this question that goes around, that's been going around forever. I just typically say, degree. Do you say degrees, certifications, or both?
Okay, okay. So, all right, in full transparency, when I initially started pursuing IT, honestly, I didn't think it was going to be possible to get a $50,000 a year role or anything higher than that without having a degree. I thought that was going to be a crutch and something that would limit me drastically. I was like, I don't even have an associate's, barely have experience. Um, but I mean, just shining light on the path that I took, I realized how powerful having a certification was in terms of allowing you to stand out in the application process. I mean, I say it holds its weight there for most certainly. And I would, if it came down to, degree versus cert, I would opt for the cert. One, because it can take you less time, definitely,
Yeah.
to acquire it. And then it's also something that actively ensures that a person reviewing your resume knows you have exposure to this information, because it just has that stamp of approval saying, okay, they studied this material to certify their knowledge in this given subject. Um, and plus, everybody doesn't have the money to acquire a degree.
Exactly.
Um, or invest the amount of time, depending on their situation, that it would take to pursue a 4-year degree. So definitely knowing that degrees are really a hot topic when it comes to IT, and getting you noticed on your application or resume is definitely beneficial.
No, I agree. I agree. And it's got its pros and cons on both sides of it. You know what I'm saying? Well, I know when I came in, degree was the big thing. Everybody talked about, hey, you should get a degree. You should look into getting a degree. So that's kind of why I went that route. You know what I'm saying? After joining the military and all that stuff, I just used my GI Bill and went to, and got a degree. But yeah, you're right. Those certifications hold that weight where it's like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing, you know what I'm saying? So I agree with you on that, you know what I'm saying? And so a little, I always say like a little bit of both. And then it depends on your situation. So I mean, you're right on point with what you said. I'm just adding to it. But yeah, it kind of depends on your situation as well, because not everybody's in a financial situation to go get a degree. And really those degrees, they kind of help you later in your career. In my opinion, the certs will get you in the door a little bit faster. Those degrees will help you later on, especially when you're looking at senior roles and getting into um, higher level IT positions where you're really not as hands on, but you're, directing the people that are hands on. So, yeah, I agree. I
Got
agree.
you. It's easy when you're starting out to think that that's a mandatory requirement,
Hmm.
especially when you see it on just about every job description
Oh,
that you
yeah.
look at, saying, mandating 4 years experience, 10 years experience if you don't have a degree. But um, just knowing that you have a certification, applying to that role anyway, you'll be shocked at how many callbacks you get, just because, certs are highly valued in the field of IT.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. 100%, bro. 100%. I agree. Um, Now, have you touched on any Linux before?
I have some fundamental, I'm not Linux savvy, but I know enough to operate it.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, I always ask that question because I'm a Linux. I mainly talk about the Linux operating system on my channel, and I just always throw that in there. And also, do you think it's important to know a little bit of Linux? I know you do a lot of command line work with working with Cisco devices, so that may be something that can help. But do you think that's important to know in any way in the
So
type
I'll
of roles
say,
that you worked? I'm sorry.
yeah, I said no, you're good, you got. I say yes and no. If you're starting out, it's not something that you need to feel the pressure or feeling like you need to learn Linux in order to learn networking, because it's two separate
Okay.
things. It's good to know the fundamentals of how a lot of things work, but if you're just pursuing a networking route,
Hmm.
it's definitely not something that you need. However, later on, it is very beneficial to understand how it works, because, and I'm sure you know this, Linux runs on underneath pretty much everything.
Yep. Yep.
A lot of the networking devices that I've interfaced with in my career has run on top of Linux, and knowing how to drop down into the shell and run commands to check things like the CPU of the host operating system just allows you more details and to go in depth into your troubleshooting capabilities.
Cool, cool. Yep, yep, yep. And man, I agree with you there though. Like it's not as important. And that's one thing I say on my channel all the time. Like, yeah, I talk about Linux. I never really used it in my professional career at all. In a production environment. I haven't used it. So I've been I don't know, it's just been something that I've been interested in just learning and playing around with. I kind of got the Linux bug just playing around with it, outside of work, and so that's why I kind of talk about it on my channel. But I haven't actually worked in a production environment using Linux. You know what I'm saying? There's always been those Linux servers, that were managed by other people, but I've never really managed them. So yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and most positions you run into, well, at least that's been my experience. I know things are changing. They're constantly changing. Um, but it's a Windows environment most places, and I've done a lot of contracting work, and this kind of rolls into the next question I was gonna ask you, because I know you said you've done some contracting. How difficult was, and I didn't even finish my thought, but don't worry about it. How difficult was it? How difficult was it in those contracting roles? Like, I know for me, um you got an end date on these contracts, and I'm not talking about contract to hire. Did you work contract to hire, or was it just straight contract work?
So that first full-time role, that was contract. Uh, it was a long-term contract role, but it
Okay.
was just full-time as a contract employee.
Okay. So, um, my question is like, how difficult was that dealing with? Because I know with me, working in contracting, they can end those contracts at any time. You know what I'm saying? And they could cut positions, without it's at will. So, which most jobs on the other side are at will as well, depending on the state and all that stuff. But yeah, how was it difficult working, or how was the experience working as a contractor?
It's definitely different from being full-time, especially when I talk about the onboarding process, because you're not a dedicated employee to the company. As you mentioned, it's an at-will employment.
Yep.
It can end at any time. Um, but and so there's that knowing that there's not really stability
Yep.
there because you're not locked into that role. But it's also really fast paced because the company isn't as invested in you, being that you're a contract employee. um, it's really a learn as you go in a fast paced environment. And if you're just starting out,
Yep.
it can seem like a lot. Um, um, but I mean, there's also some people that like to bump their head against the wall a few times, and that's how they learn. So I mean, if you're one of those people, and I mean, you want to gain exposure that way, it's a good way to get started. The hourly rate for one of those roles is usually higher than if you were a full-time employee.
Yep.
So that's definitely a benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've done contracting, you know, overseas. I don't know if you knew that about me, but I actually worked in Afghanistan for a while. So it's lucrative. You can make a whole lot of money, and um just to throw this out there, I've said it on my channel multiple times. I was on a contract where I was making $250,000. You know what I'm saying? I was in Afghanistan. You know what I'm saying? The military was responsible for protecting me and all that stuff. But yeah, position was $250,000, and um, for it was a year and a half or so when I did it. But yeah, I worked over there for about 4.5 years because the money was so good in contracting because of um the way that the government throws out money like that. And this is what this is the question I was gonna ask you. Don't you remember we were saying talking beforehand? You well, I don't know if you want to talk. Well, yeah, you live in the DMV area, so I know it's a lot of government contracting out there, and I was just curious if you've worked on any government contracting up there, if you can talk about it.
Right. Just to touch on what you said, 250,000 contract, and that's dope, man.
Yeah.
Shout out to you over there. um, but as far as like I know there's definitely a lot of opportunities in IT
Mhm.
in the Virginia area. That's one of the reasons why I sort of came over here to this part and moved away from where I was initially at South
Mhm.
Carolina. I feel like when I was just starting out, I feel like I applied to every company out there.
Yeah.
I was like, but but no, I definitely came here. It's a lot more opportunities, and as far as contracting in particularly, I couldn't speak too much on it. I have to
Okay.
do some digging.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I was only asking because I know it's I've met a lot of people that do government contract out there in the DMV because it's a lot of military bases out there and all that stuff, and so I was just curious if you ever dealt with it because um most of those people are prior service, and so being that you're not prior service, I wanted to see if you was able to get in because there are some opportunities for civilians to actually get in or people that never been in the military because you got to have a security clearance, you know what I'm saying,
Right,
in most
right.
cases. And you get
That's a
that.
big limit for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
yeah, and you get that through joining the military. So I was just curious, and I met like one guy that actually was on a government contract, and he went through the security clearance process outside of it, but it was because of his skills how they was able to get him into that role. So that's why I was, yeah,
So,
curious.
so yeah, I can speak on that a little bit. I've run into a lot of people in the space that have, taken advantage of a lot of these government contracts
Hmm.
that are out there. And like to speak to the point that you say, they can be, very lucrative.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a bad taste of the impression of it because I was in that role starting out in my career and I
Okay.
was still trying to figure out things. I wasn't in a position where I was like, "Oh, let me leverage this as an opportunity to funnel some pocket money into my pocket while I work as a contractor and stack these different jobs."
Hmm.
But but there's like if you just do a search online, there's so many secret contract roles out
Oh
there,
yeah.
and having that military background for the people that are already in, that's that's almost like that makes you that puts you one step closer than somebody that may not have that secret clearance.
Hmm.
The way that I've come across and understand that you can get that clearance is you get good at what you do.
Yep.
You apply to a company that's like, okay, we want to bring you on board, and in some cases that company will actually sponsor you to get your secret clearance, and in that case they do that whole military FBI background
Yep.
check and go through that whole process for those who are comfortable and want that clearance. But it definitely opens up a whole new workspace category for you to apply and be able to get access to.
Nah, you're right. You're right. And that's what I did. I leveraged, that clearance, and that's how I was able to secure a lot of the roles that I mean, I'm currently even working in a contract position. It's because I got a clearance, as well as the skills. Obviously, I got to have the skills, certifications, and all that good stuff. But yeah, that really, it really puts you like in a somewhat of a different category because there's not that many people out there with those clearances, and they probably finna start buckling down after that 21-year-old kid that just got caught putting. I don't know if you've seen that story. I'm sure you have. It was all over the news. That 21-year-old kid, Air Force National Air Guard guardsman that was sharing uh, top secret information on Discord or something. It was
Oh
crazy.
wow.
It was a
Nah,
crazy
that
story. Oh, okay, well, look it up. Look it up after this, though, man. It's a crazy story, man. The kid just being an idiot. But yeah,
that's
yeah,
wild. And just touching on lastly on what you just said, being in that different category. For one, I mean, having that clearance, you're in a category, but it's not a lot of people that have that clearance that are also trying to pursue a role in IT.
yep.
So it limits you even more. And, the
Hmm.
competition sort of weeds out from there. You stack a certification,
Oh yeah, you golden. Yep, golden. And
uh,
it was something else you brought up earlier. Oh, um, you were talking about how you move, to Virginia, and this is one thing I wanted you to touch on as well. Like, cause like I always say this to people as well. Like, sometimes depending on where you are, you know what I'm saying, you may have to, take those steps and move because I'm originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Not many tech jobs down there. The industry is down there is like oil and gas, you know what I'm saying? And working in chemical plants. I never wanted to do that type of stuff. My dad did it. But I wanted to get into something, technical. But sometimes you gotta take that leap of faith and move from your hometown, depending on where you're from. You know what I'm saying, in order to get the positions or get into roles that you want to. And if you want to touch
mm,
on that, you can.
no, that's big. That's big. Leaving out of that comfort zone of where I was originally at, which was South Carolina, small area, and there weren't as many tech opportunities at the time when I was down there. And my first leap was to move to North Carolina, and from there I saw how many more opportunities there were compared to just being in one state over. And then coming up here to Virginia, it's like opportunities. So I definitely, I know it's a big step for a lot of people to uh move from where family is, because I mean that's like one of the main reasons of being where you are. But it's like stepping outside of that comfort zone for me was like the biggest opportunity for growth that I've seen.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, man, and that's one reason. See, and I don't want I always preference these statements when what I'm about to say, that I'm not a recruiter. I'm not trying to get anybody to join the military. I mean, you make your own decision on that. I'm not sponsored by the military in any way. I'm just giving you the the ideas of what you could do with it if you do decide to go that route. But sometimes I recommend to people, it's younger people, getting out of high school, really don't know what direction they want to go into. Join the military. You know what I'm saying? They'll pay for your school. Yeah, you may end up in certain parts of the world. You know what I'm saying? It's not all, peaches and cream. You just gotta get into the right positions, the right roles, and all that stuff when you join. Make sure you talk to those recruiters and make sure you get the job that you looking for and not just take what they're gonna try to push you in. But nah, you can greatly benefit by joining into that, and it has helped me, and that's why I talk about it. It's not them trying to recruit anybody or anything like that. This is your decision, but it helped me, and I'm just giving you my experience based on, how it has helped me. And they have IT roles in the military, and they'll pay for your school, obviously with the GI Bill. And then also, if you get into those IT roles in the military, they pay for your certifications. So you can get the CompTIA certifications, the Cisco certifications, depending on whatever your position you work in. You can get all those certifications for free. They give you vouchers. So you can get it for free. So if that's just an option, you know. So just always do that.
It's good to spread that awareness, because a lot of people don't know about, I mean, they know about the military as being an option, but they don't realize some of the benefits that come from taking that route. And exactly, I think what makes it hard for a lot of people that get into the military early is just not having uh, knowing where they want to go. Like if you want to get in IT and you know that that's your path, well, you can sort of set up how you navigate the military to getting I forgot what those trainings
Oh
or
yeah, the
specialties
jobs.
that you
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yep,
Yeah, you can use that to, be your main focus in there and learn. So that way, when you're going to drill or you're doing AIT or something, it's reinforcing what you're learning in IT.
yep, yep. Exactly. I agree. And sorry, I didn't want to take you down that road. As far as the military, it just that just popped up, and I wanted to really wanted
Okay.
to touch on it. But nah. So um, back to what you do on your channel. Can you go down and give people a explanation of the purpose of your channel and why you do what you do when it comes to putting out this information?
So most definitely, I started this channel because, for one, I have family members that are also trying to get into IT, and I know from my own experience how difficult it felt when I was getting into that field. It was way harder than I thought it was going to be in terms of knowing what I needed to do, what next step to take, what I actually needed to focus on rather than what I thought I needed. And it was is some big shifts that I had to make, and so I just put together these videos to help people out on their journey so that they can navigate the field of IT a little bit better in terms of the networking world, since that's where a lot of my experience stems from.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, and man, like I said, you do an awesome job over there, man. The information is like super clear, and you break things down in a very digestible way. So kudos to what you're doing over there, and we need more people, you know, sharing their experiences and putting out information that can help people. Because I really have a big passion about helping people get into the IT field and trying to help, because I didn't know how to navigate when I first came in. It wasn't like YouTube channels out here talking about this stuff, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And so now all these people have all these resources, as far as YouTube and just different ways they can get information that's fed to them. Um, and so that's why I try to, push any and everybody I see that's doing something positive to help people. But um, what I'm saying,
I
mm-hmm,
That's big. That's big. And I think why not as many people pursue IT is because they don't it's made out to be a lot harder, because it is hard. I won't
mm-hmm,
sugarcoat it. But paths aren't as I mean, it's more so now. You got a lot of people doing it now in terms of, you know, providing paths to get places. But yeah, I mean, it's another resource that people can have to figure out what that next step is going to be. Just touching on what you said. So
yeah.
that's big.
Yeah, yeah. So, it was one other technical question I wanted to ask you. So, do you know any programming languages, or do you recommend any that people should look into?
So um not that it's a requirement for networking or network engineering or anything, but I myself, I've gotten exposure to Python.
Oh yeah.
My reason was, it was simple, and the way a lot of things work is, if you learn the fundamentals of one, it makes it so much easier to learn these other languages. So there was things like C plus and Ruby and stuff like that. I don't know a whole lot about the
Mm-hmm.
programming aspect, but I was able to, build some basic programs using Python that, just allowed me to knock out some repeatable tasks that, is cool once you learn how it can benefit you in whatever role you're in. It's fun, but even myself, I'm still a beginner at it. But I chose Python because it was one of the easier ones for me to sort of pick up on and understand the structure of how it looks and follow along with it.
Yeah, yeah, and I hear that a lot. A lot of people say, Python, and I played around with it too. So I understand it. I can read it. You know what I'm saying? But you're absolutely right. Once you learn one, you kind of understand the structure of it, and the syntax is just different. You know what I'm saying? So I agree with you there. Now, um,
That's even
mm,
like with networking, and
mm-hmm,
that tripped me up in the beginning. I was when I first started, the only thing I knew was Cisco. It was
yeah,
all Cisco because that's what the CCNA uses. That's what the course I was in was teaching us on. And so when I got exposed to a different vendor for the first time, like Juniper, HP, or the other companies are out there,
mm-hmm,
I was like, whoa, these commands don't work on this device.
yeah,
And that's where I realized, the concepts are more important than the commands because, you're going to have different languages for anything, whether you're working with programming, networking. It's more important that you get the overall idea of how it functions
mm-hmm.
because it's designed to where it's going to work and say another networking device or another programming language. So just knowing those fundamentals is key.
Yep, yep. I agree. I agree. Now, have you worked with any like automation on networking devices?
I played around with Ansible and
Okay.
a nice tool called Nornir. That was fun when I was using it. What
Okay.
was cool about it is, just to give you an idea, it's like a CLI tool that you can use. And what you're able to do is you can push configurations to or commands to multiple devices at once. So rather than, setting up this putty connection to one device at a time, running this show command, I can push that one command to all 14 devices or 50 devices at one time and have it pull back that information. So it's definitely valuable when you're able to learn how you can leverage it in your role.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Hey, so what's the name of that one again?
That one's called Nornir. It's Norir.
All right, or okay, all right, cool. Automation tool, because I've used Ansible. I've done videos showing people how to set up like an Ansible, server, and then adding all your nodes, and you could push out, Linux commands, or you could pull, logs, all kind of stuff you could do with Ansible. So I never heard of that one. I'm gonna definitely check that one out. Now it was one. It's two more questions I want to ask you, and they off the cuff, and it's based off of what you talked about. Now, one of the things I like to ask people that come here with a networking background, because I'm still not 100% clear on how networking works in the cloud. Can you talk about that, or I mean, you ain't got to break it down like in no long video. I mean, no long, explanation. But can you just give a brief overview of how networking in cloud, and then also like will it affect jobs in the future in networking? You see what I'm saying?
Got you. So the biggest difference that I would say in terms of understanding how the cloud works and traditional networking that you may hear referred to as
On
on-prem
prem.
or
Yeah.
on-site uh, or locally managed networks is that with the cloud, the whole setting up the systems and this, what's the best way to put it, within the cloud, a lot of the networking components, all of that is nothing that's stored locally for a customer on site.
Yeah.
Like that's in a data center over at Amazon,
Hmm.
running on whatever server or whatever, and all of that's maintained on the back end by Amazon.
Yep.
So the process of maintaining those aren't done locally. And so that cuts costs for businesses that don't have to house that operation in-house or hire the expertise for that in-house. Um, and while it does lost my train of thought there. Uh,
I hope I ain't throw a wrench at you, man.
no, 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 no.
uh,
So while the cloud does maintain those services,
mm-hmm.
the fundamentals of networking are still present.
Still the same.
When
Mm-hmm.
I talked about those concepts earlier, I mean that's still going to apply uh, as far as who owns the physical equipment.
Yeah.
That's where that biggest differentiator is. It's no
Mm-hmm.
longer managed locally on site. That's all being done in a remote location. I think, yeah, cloud is just a good way for saying it's held remotely
Yeah.
somewhere else and
Mm-hmm.
being managed. And you're able to access those resources, as a lot of people know, from this online dashboard where you can view your networks and how you have your site configured.
Okay.
But that's what I would say the biggest difference is. To answer your second question, how do you see it affecting network engineers and traditional roles? It it uh it definitely hints at a change in uh what you want to learn. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not completely new to where it's overhauling, how networking works.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how it's being managed, and it prompts you to reevaluate your skills and understanding how you actually need to know how to interface with these cloud platforms to understand how those networking concepts apply. That would be my
Mm-hmm.
best breakdown of sort of how networking is still relevant, is
Mm-hmm.
still there, but because the interface and how you go about managing that whole process is through a different tool. You just have
Yeah.
to get familiar with the tool and learning how it's broken down and how it applies.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah. Nah, great, great, great answer, bro. Yeah. I know I know I didn't, kind of prep you for that. It's just something that I thought about that I always, ask or whatever. And cause I don't know. I remember, everything was on prem. Now this whole cloud thing is coming in, and then I didn't know if it would affect jobs in the future. And it's mainly just for anybody that's interested. So basically, what he's saying is networking is still relevant. It's just the way you go about managing it. So yeah, yep, I agree right there.
Definitely.
Now, last question. You know what I'm saying? Um, we in this age of everybody creating an AI. And I was just wondering what your thoughts on um, how this will affect the industry as a whole, as far as just tech in general. Because I know a lot of people are using, Chat GPT board and all this stuff. Um, do you think it'll affect or make change to the way um, people get these roles and maintain these roles, and just will it affect it in general? Just your overall thoughts.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. AI is it's it's definitely here. I mean, you
Yeah.
see it in terms of all of the SDN solutions that we see. We see it in terms of Chat GBT, and how those are coming. But really, this whole era of like just uh automation, it's making things and systems a lot more accurate and
Yeah. It's
uh
taking out that human error. Yeah.
right, it's bringing back that consistency, or it's improving consistency and the accuracy of how tasks are carried out. And so while it definitely reduces a lot of labor in terms of, you know, physical people needing to be able to know how to do those remedial tasks, like for instance, in the networking aspect, rather than, you know, having a person that would manually traditionally configure 50 switches one by one or so. Now you can use a software that's
Yep.
going to be able to provision those switches and do that, execute that process with little errors. And
Mm-hmm.
so it becomes more of a shift in understanding, similar to what we were just speaking about on on the cloud. It
Yeah.
becomes learning how to manage these interfaces so that you leverage them and understand them in a way that allows you to just be more efficient at what you do. Because I mean, that's what they are. They're innovative. They allow us to uh, you know, cut out the tasks that don't really serve a purpose in, you
Yeah.
know, in today's world. So I mean, getting on top of it and learning and getting exposure to it, how it works, how it could benefit you, I think that's big. But on top of that, AI is just, it's also creating a whole bunch of new jobs.
Oh yeah.
Like you're gonna have a ton of uh space for data analysts and people, really, that's gonna expand a lot,
Oh yeah.
because machine learning, that's something that it's been, it wasn't as popular as it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like you may have come across a course on Udemy and it mentioned that, and you're like, okay. But now it's like it's the hot topic, and it's really something that a lot of businesses are pushing out, like what you see with Chat GBT 4 and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
definitely some really cool stuff there.
Nah, you're right. You're right. You're right. And that's what people need to understand. It is creating jobs. It's it's because all this AI is data driven. So someone has to, until they figure out how to, manage all this data that they get in. They're gonna need people, working with that, creating models and all that stuff. So, uh, it's definitely, and that's why I'm kind of glad I'm in the. I've been looking into. I'm a database administrator, so I've been looking into a lot of, data science tools, playing around with or statistical data, just getting ahead of the curve when it comes to data, because a lot of these
Mhm.
tools are data driven. So
That's right in your domain.
yeah, yeah, so that's why I wanted to ask that question. But nah, man, I
I have a
appreciate.
question for
Oh,
you
go ahead.
actually. Do you feel like your data experience sort of makes that curve of learning AI more uh easier to understand, sort of how it's broken down on the back end?
I think so. I just haven't been able to look at the way it's broken down in the back end on any of these platforms. But yeah, I'm sure that it will help, understand it, because um just understanding how data works and how to scrub data, how to move data around and all that stuff, that will benefit you, because that data has to come from somewhere, and it has to be corrected in most cases in order to be in a format so that AI can read it. So
Mhm.
that's where I'm kind of at, like with the massaging of data and correcting data. So I understand a lot of that, and so I think that does give me a leg up, so to speak, if I do get to the point where I start messing with some of this AI software. So just my
That's
thoughts.
sweet, man.
Yeah, and shout out to Engineering Cannabis. Let me shout out a couple people I see coming through, and they giving great comments. I definitely appreciate all you guys coming through. Let's see, Engineering Cannabis. He says AI creating prompts, engineering, and ML roles. Yes, yep, it is. It's creating all those types of roles. Um, Caesar says I use two VPSs, one with Google and another with Linode. I do the same thing. I got, you know, uh, virtual machines pretty much everywhere. Like, not everywhere. I don't have any on Amazon, but I do. Like, I run my websites on virtual machine or virtual server, VPS or whatever you want to call it, on Google. That's where I got all my websites at. I got a Linux server up there where I manage all that stuff.
That was
Um,
sweet. I mean, it's cost effective.
and that's the reason I did that is because those hosting companies were like super expensive, bro. Like I used to pay for hosting like through, I think it was HostGator or something like that. I was paying like I don't
Mm.
know, like $200 something a year. Now I pay like maybe $80 for my servers because it's all dependent on, see, with these cloud platforms, it's all dependent on the amount of data that you use, the amount of traffic and all that stuff. So I don't get much traffic. I get a decent amount of traffic, but it's not to the point where I'm, and if I ever need to upgrade, I'll upgrade. So that's the benefit of building it out yourself. um Let me see.
That's dope, man.
For sure, for sure. But I don't see any questions for you, bro. So I ain't gonna hold you up, bro. I know it's your Saturday. You took your time out to come over here, man, and do this. I definitely appreciate it, but I don't want to hold you up too long, bro. But nah, man, this was an awesome interview. I definitely want to have you back if you ever want to come back. You know what I'm saying? You're more than welcome to. If you want to collab any other kind of way, just let me know. You know, I'm down. I'm game. I'm always, looking to work with other people that are doing something positive to kind of push this community. So, um,
For
you're
sure, for
always
sure.
welcome, bro. And any last words?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. For the people on there that are starting out and trying to get into IT for the first time, just definitely be persistent. Go identify what you want, get clear on that. Expect it to be hard because I mean it can get frustrating, but you know definitely keep that faith and that drive towards where you want to go. It
Yep,
Cool.
yep. And for all you guys that probably watching on the replay, but I've been dropping John Green's YouTube channel in the chat, so definitely click on his link, subscribe. Like I said, I support this young guy. He's uh he's doing great things on his channel, putting out great information, and I definitely want to, put him in front of a bigger audience if I can, because I'm not that big either, but I still want to put him in as in front of as many people as possible because I believe in what he's doing and I agree with it. You know what I'm saying? I want to put it out there. But shout out to everybody that came through. Definitely appreciate all you guys again. Go down, hit that like button if you haven't. And like I always say at the end of my videos, keep it techie.
Hey, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and stay on for a second, bro. After this, let me
For
run the
sure.
outro. Peace, guys. Peace, though.